Hey, what's up guys, and welcome to today's video. Now in this video I wanted to talk just pretty much like off the cuff about a message I received on Instagram the other day from a lady who said to me that she was a taekwondo athlete and was wondering when the best time to fit in her conditioning work would be during the week. And this is something I've been asked by quite a few people, so I thought I would address it in this video. Now, she explained to me that the kind of conditioning work that she does is like some weight training and some circuit training in between her regular taekwondo practice. And because she'd explained to me that she was a taekwondo athlete was the first thing she'd said, that was like how I kind of base my answer. And that's always how I base my answer as well, is like, if somebody asks me something, I'll always make very clear, like, what are you trying to do in a sense, because that's going to depend on the kind of advice that I would give afterwards. And I'm a very firm believer in kind of like specialisms and like niching down into certain areas. So that kind of sounds like common sense, but you'd be very surprised about the kind of amount of people who say they want to do something, for instance, but then are doing all these other things that are not really helping it. And I think part of the problem with that is just kind of like ignorance to the fact or unawareness of what they're actually doing and if it's helping, or even sometimes it's that they actually enjoy doing the other things, and they just can't kind of like let them go and admit it's sort of like detracting from what they're trying to do. So an analogy of that might be like if a person's trying to lose weight, for instance, and then on the weekends they're having this like massive cheat day where they're kind of eating like 3 or 4 times more calories than their recommended amount, and it's like they might say to themselves, you know, oh yeah, but it's like helping me stay on track with the diet and stuff. But really it's actually like undermining all of their progress, and it's just because they enjoy eating like all that stuff on the weekend, and like a kind of self-justification, if you know what I mean. Now the way that relates to what we're saying is, I do think like a lot of people will say to me things like, you know, I want to be faster, I want to be more explosive and stuff. But then when I tell them kind of like the things, say for instance, that I'm doing, because I can only obviously speak from my own experience, they kind of like, it's almost as if they don't like the answer, or they don't want to like take the advice because they've already got their own preconceived ideas of what I might say. And if it doesn't match to that, then it's almost like they're like, oh well, I asked him but I'm just going to ignore it, kind of thing. So an example is, for instance, like a lot of people kind of will be martial artists, for instance, and training in that, and then also they'll be doing like an insane like powerlifting program on the side, which is basically like destroying their body, so they're kind of like in a weakened state for the rest of the week, especially like going into the rest of their practice and things. And this is something that this lady said to me in this message as well, is she wasn't doing like a crazy powerlifting program, but she did say that the conditioning work she does is like weight training and circuits. And after doing that, she does feel a sort of like a soreness and like a loss of mobility for a few days afterwards. So in my opinion, that's actually detracting from the taekwondo practice. So in her case, and the case of many other people as well, if that's happening to you, then it'll be much more beneficial for you to kind of select something else that's perhaps not as taxing on the body. You're not like redlining the body, you're not tiring yourself out and then not being able to perform for days afterwards, because really consistency is much more important than intensity. The conventional wisdom is like, go hard, you know, like push your body to the limit and then like see how far you can go and then go even beyond that kind of thing. And when you do that, really, it's like, yes, it might feel good in the moment, but then like the next few days afterwards, you're just not in a good state to train again. So the theory is basically, instead of pushing yourself to like that 100% limit and then having to kind of like recover for days afterwards, it's like you go maybe to 70 to 80% each time you train, and then you kind of are able to do much more training over time. So if you do like 100% one day and then absolutely kill yourself, then really you shouldn't be able to train properly for like another week or something while you recover. However, if you're not going to that limit and you're just doing a little bit, you're still having a great workout and you're still training your skills and things like that, but over time that, say like 70 over the days and then over the weeks and months, is going to add up to way more training than like 1 or 2 really intense sessions a week and then 3 or 4 shitty ones where you're basically exhausted and achy and just not at your best and probably quite miserable as well. So it also leads into this point of basically kind of making training addictive and getting into like a flow state while you're doing it. But I mean, these are all things that I can talk about in other videos because they all kind of connect, but I think if I talk about them all now, this video will probably be about 3 hours long. So getting back to the point, basically, it's like you want to be doing things to serve your agenda. So personally, I like body weight training. I feel like I'm able to do it most days and not get any aching from it. What I like to do is like in the morning or kind of like midday time is do a short body weight circuit that's quite intense, and then in the evening times I'll do more kind of like skill focused work, or you know, some training with some friends or something, or like purely martial arts focused stuff, which also has kind of elements of fitness and stuff in it as well, but I'm able to really focus upon that thing because that's my main aim. So if I was doing the thing earlier, the fitness like circuit earlier, and that was so hard that later on my martial arts had suffered for it, then I would have to flip that a little bit and change the balance, because it's, you know, then it's taking away from what I'm doing. So this chart kind of demonstrates how you might break your training down during a once a day training session. I choose just to do mine in 2 different portions just because my lifestyle allows, and I prefer a little bit of a rest between the different parts. However, most people don't have that option and can only really train once a day, so something like this would work for them in that regard. So it's mainly obviously the skill focus 85% and perhaps some conditioning work at the end as 15%. So training the skill predominantly, or the activity, is pretty much like the best way to develop, and it's going to engage what's called the SAID principle, which is something I've said before, which is SAID, specific adaptation to imposed demands. And it pretty much means, like, you know, the body will take into account what is the stimulus coming in, and it will adapt to that. So, you know, if you want to go and throw a baseball all the time, your body's going to learn that, and it's going to adapt muscles to be able to do that better. And that's exactly the same in martial arts, but you do have to train to like a level of intensity to kind of activate that in a sense. One thing I do say to people is when they ask me like how to get fast and things, for instance, I will say, in order to be fast, you have to try to be fast. Which sounds paradoxical on the surface until you explain it, but it's like if you're just standing there and you've got like a level 1 to 3 intensity, then your body's never under any like pressure or anything to evolve, so it just doesn't, basically, and you just stay at that level. Whereas if you're kind of like, you're calling on the muscles more and more in order to be fast, like when I go and say hit the bag or something like that, I will force myself to be fast, and that's how my body's like adapted and developed to do that more and more. Since getting this video onto my editing software, I realised it looks like I'm kind of contradicting myself when I say the word intensity in these 2 different contexts. It was a pretty bad decision to use that word. I should have actually used the word intention in this part, because what I really mean is more like the intention to hit in the way you want to. In terms of like when you go to the gym, for instance, when I go to a gym, because I train at a public gym as well as some other places, like you see a lot of people who are basically like there time after time after time, and they don't really get any better with things, and that's in weight training or anything as well. And like I mentioned before, I do think a lot of this is that people kind of are in 2 worlds and they haven't really made a decision. It's like they say they want to be, you know, martial artist, tennis player, whatever, but they also love this other thing that's like, you know, that is kind of like still benefiting them physically, but it is going to detract from that balance. I just think for people training general fitness who are wanting to remain healthy, being kind of good at everything's all right, because it doesn't really matter like if you know, you're not really trying to excel in one area, you're just trying to keep yourself in good condition. But if you're trying to be good at something, I think it's best to kind of niche down. And if you come to the conclusion that, you know, yes, this sort of like heavy training is taking away from my skill, but I still like it, then that's absolutely fine. But don't like don't stay in that kind of like limbo state for too long, because I think a lot of people get quite frustrated that they're not progressing, but it's actually just because they're kind of focusing on the wrong things, really. I'm going to wrap this video up here because I could just kind of like carry on talking forever, but if you like this type of video, me just talking about something and kind of sharing my thoughts and things, just let me know and I will do some more of these, because they're pretty easy to make. It's literally just me speaking, so I'm happy to do more of that stuff. And if you've got any questions or anything, just leave a comment down below. Remember to subscribe and hit the bell thing as well, because that does something to like the algorithm or something like that. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.